Welcome everybody to the Thursday Pivot, where we're going to talk about this shift, whether that's in benefits or business. The whole purpose of this Zoomcast is to make sure that we have the right information to succeed, to interact with one another, network, so that we can be more successful on the other side. My name is Lori Power, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm a group benefit consultant. Part of my promise to working with clients is to be consistent. And in that consistency, I want to provide the information that people need to be successful. So I'm really excited, and you can see that I'm excited about having Steve in today to talk about health spending accounts. I know we have people who are included here, Steve, who are just thinking about implementing a health spending account. And that's really where I want to start. I want to start with, what is a health spending account? And why is it an important tool to use within the benefit world?
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Lori. Super pumped to be here. I like this format too. So I'm an open book. Anyone who knows me on here, I'm an open book. So feel free to ask whatever you want. So HSAs or PHSPs is what they're called in the CRA documents, but most people know them as HSAs. They've been around, I believe, since the late 80s. I think it was the Paul Martin, when he was finance minister, brought the concept through. And essentially what they are is a way, and I believe the original intent was for small businesses that can't afford a traditional insured plan to offer some sort of benefit with limited risk to employees. And how CRA structured them was they took the personal medical exempt tax credit list and said, we'll use that list for HSAs, and the employer can allocate a certain flat dollar amount to each employee of the company, and they can use those funds for anything that's eligible on the medical expense tax credit. There's some, and they, which I don't love, but they kind of sprinkled out the rules with these in a few different IT bulletins, but generally speaking, they've created some certain parameters. So it acts and feels like an insurance plan, but it's a capped dollar amount that the employees can go spend. The upside of it from an employer standpoint is it's a 100% write-off. So the claims plus admin fees is can be a write-off for the business, and the employees receive the benefits tax-free. So there's no income tax implications on that. Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to date myself, but I don't think I'd shock anybody here that I've been in the business since '97. And, I remember back in the day how we would rely, especially in a marketplace of small business owners. So when I'm saying small business owners, I mean 50 people and less. And we were relying on cost plus, right? That you could use as a vehicle through the insurance carrier, but it was really limited on the day. There was a lot of anti-selection that went on. And I remember approaching the insurance carriers, and I did go to the big three, as naive and ignorant as I was as a lowly consultant, to ask them why they weren't doing this for small businesses. Like, it was just, why not have a health spending account, ASO, available to small businesses? And at the time, you had to be 150 people or more in your business to even qualify for it. So companies such as yours coming along and being able to offer it as a standalone was such an important tool for us. How did you get started?
Yeah, so it was funny beginning. So I originally graduated university and went into oil and gas accounting. Being in Calgary, everyone just kind of gravitated towards oil and gas. So I didn't even know the benefits industry existed. And then I randomly met my partner, Tim, one day. I was actually going for a beer at his office with one of his employees who I played college hockey with. And we're having a beer in the office. They had Friday beers. And this young guy came in and started asking me all these questions about benefits and investments. And he knew I had graduated with finance. And he actually sat there and said, do you want to come work for us? And I'm like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm Tim. I actually own the brokerage. So then I said, well, what would I be doing? And he said, I'm acquiring a group benefits block of business. So you can learn that. The guy who is operating it now is 62 and looking to exit. So I saw a huge opportunity, but then I said, I have no idea what this actually is. So I researched it a bit. I actually like thought this is amazing that it's a job being a benefits advisor. It seems super interesting. The group pension side struck my interest originally being a finance grad, but and so I actually came over and started working with Tim and under an advisor. So I was a group advisor starting out. And what the old owner had built was a paper-based health spending account business. He used Microsoft Access on the back end to kind of calculate balances. It was super old school, but he developed it. He actually coded it, which was amazing at 62 years old. Like he was a genius back then. So we operated it. I love the concept of them from day one, just I think because a little bit coming from an accounting background. And he exited the business. And I actually went to Tim, who I was, pretty close with, and said, Tim, what happens if this Microsoft Access database goes down? Like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, oh, crap, you're right. I don't know. So we actually looked for developers, but the development to actually find a software developer, if we needed it, was so expensive because it was such an old technology that it was almost out of the question. So we had to build something for ourselves. So we built myHSA, we call it 1.0 for ourselves originally. We unplugged the old system, migrated all the clients over, and it was a gong show, as you can imagine, put them onto the system. And then we started running it, and we had an app and everything. And a few advisors in Calgary said, what do you guys do? And I'm super interested. Could we maybe use the platform? And that's when we went, oh, okay. Well, if we white label this and kind of give it to advisors, that'd be kind of an interesting platform, because up until then in the industry, especially in Alberta, like I feel like out west HSAs have been around a lot more. So there's a lot of HSA only providers. As an advisor, we used to, if you had an HSA and you didn't put it with the carrier, you would send it off to a third party company that would really manage the relationship and take over the client. And there wasn't a lot of even profit sharing on that transaction. You would just, it's just a little HSA, send it over to Olympia or whoever. And they would actually take over that client relationship. But what we found as an advisor was that these are a great like add-on, a great intro to a new client. They're really good for small businesses. It should sit with the advisor. And if they had the proper platform, they could actually manage the whole thing themselves. So that's what started in 2013. Tim sold the benefits firm and the P&C brokerage he ran. And we started off on our own in 2013 and just kind of advisor by advisor by advisor across the country, and then built the platform out as we went along. So it was a tough sled early on, but we only went through advisors. That was always kind of a key to our growth strategy, which was super slow and really hard at the beginning. But after a while, and with the help of League, they kind of solidified that that's the way to go, is to actually use and work with advisors as partners.
Well, and then look at the mushroom cloud that is myHSA now, right? That is, not to be jaded, but that's the platform of choice. So well done you on the early years of struggle. But we're, as consultants in the field, we're super happy about that.
Yeah, and it's been good. So, and then what we've done is we've expanded, like health spending accounts is where we started, but expanding out to wellness taxable accounts and flex accounts. We actually did flex accounts back when we were an advisor, and it was so hard for an outside advisor to come take our client, because what we would do is we would, again, because we did it all in house, is we would do the flex allocation between a wellness spending account, and we would incorporate the group RRSP and then the HSA and allocate that. And then I'd have the pooled portion with the insurer renew at a different time period. So I'd usually have the benefit or the spending account flex allocation happen January 1st, but we would do the life AD&D and disability happen mid-year. So advisors didn't, and a lot of advisors, as probably everyone on the call knows, didn't know a lot about health spending accounts. So having that little curveball in there it was very hard to take account. So I didn't lose a lot of accounts, and I was pretty green. Like I was probably should have lost a few accounts because I just came in and learned the business from day one, like live fire, which was also very tough.
Well, I think at some point we all go through that fire, and I think that's what makes us better at the business. I want to go through a little bit for those that are still learning about health spending accounts and where they fit in on a benefit plan. So correct me if I'm wrong from your point of view, but I've always looked at from the first when I started in benefits was, the purpose of insurance. The purpose of insurance is risk mitigation, risk of loss of life, risk of loss of income, and risk of a catastrophic event. Everything else, as soon as you put a dollar value on it, like vision, for instance, if it's $200 every 2 years, that stuff shouldn't be insured. That's not insurance. And I've always compared it to, although I know nothing about cars, as your tire change on your car. Why would you insure that? You're insuring your car against risk of collision, risk of theft, risk of damage, risk items. But I know I'm going to have to change the wheels on my car every so often, right? So that's the way I've always looked at it, and then create that integration with that insured product. Take me through a health spending account as the bricks and mortar of coverage. Take me through where the health spending account fits in, maybe the wellness account fits in, the taxable account fits in.
Totally. So, and what I love about it and our approach from day one, again, and I think it's because we were insurance advisors. So there's a few things we totally realize is number one, insurance has a place for sure, which we totally agree with. Number two is that for many advisors, they make a living off the insurance. So although the HSAs we find are becoming more and more of a revenue stream, we always came in with, eyes wide open saying like, we're not making any advisor rich off selling health spending accounts. So we have to come in and be the most painless part of their benefits operation and just quietly be there as a top up or a standalone plan. And it's got to be seamless and work. So, and we like the idea that the advisors really get to choose where we fit on the spectrum that you've discussed. And there's different ways that we can fit in and make it work. I always like the idea that if it's a small enough company, they might want to start, and if they're just starting out, so like we've got an advisor that just works with tech startups in Ontario. Their starter plan is usually a health spending account. Because they need fixed costs so that they know what amount each employee can claim. They can't go on, necessarily a roller coaster of insurance. If it's a 3-4 person group, the renewals can be a little bit of a roller coaster. They don't necessarily know their revenue streams and funding. So there's a starter plan concept, which I think works really well. And then as the company matures, they can incorporate and either wrap around insurance, so life, AD&D, disability, critical illness, and morph the plan like that. Or at some point, they could bring in, extended health coverage, primarily for the drugs, and put it in there, and keep the vision and say dental self-funded. Or if they want, they can insure everything and then use it as a top up to an insured plan. Most of our clients, I would say, do use us in the top up to an underlying insured plan, and even to the point where there's extended health dental, usually vision. Most advisors know to just carve that out.
Benefits by design, because the way that Mike has set up and integrated the choice of how to build those programs within seamlessly using myHSA as that top up is fundamental and unique in the Canadian marketplace. So well done you, Mike, for putting that in place, and well done at myHSA for having that ability and that flexibility to work with what we actually need in the Canadian marketplace.
Well, high five, Steve.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, and we've like I said, we've had an awesome partnership with BBD, and like Claudia, everyone at myHSA loves Claudia to death. So yeah, they've been doing a fantastic job. So and that's the bottom line, is I think where in a perfect world, I would love to see advisors get more comfortable with that funding, with the thinking that you're outlining, saying, okay, where does insurance make sense and where does it not make sense? And again, there's some questions that need to be asked, even from self-insuring dental. If you're in a business where there's super highs and lows with cash flow in the business, insuring dental might not be a terrible idea, because at least you've got level premiums each month. But the employer and everyone needs to know that if you're insuring something like vision or dental, you're just funding a plan. Like there's not an insured element to it, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong either. So that's what I like, is like, I want to be the platform as we're a tool in the advisor's toolkit to deploy when it makes sense for the specific client, and when it doesn't, do your own thing. That's all good. We're here to support it, because generally speaking, a lot of people do like the concept of spending accounts as a whole.
Let's talk about a little bit about objections. I would say that majority of my objections when I put the health spending account out, and those that know me know health spending account is part of the platform. Like it forms every conversation I have. But when I'm not working with the business owner and I'm working with an HR who perhaps doesn't have money or skin in the game, so to speak, that health spending account, they seem to put that brick wall up and say, we don't want to take that risk, not understanding tax first and foremost, and the savings of the tax advantage of a health spending account, and not understanding that they're already taking that risk. I'm going to ask you, give me some pointers on how to overcome those objections.
I always, to be honest, we've actually just put a person in the role, is usually they just need to see the system in action to kind of get over that hurdle. Once you visually see it and you see from a plan administrator what the structure looks like, and then from an employee, because that's part of the demo too, is you just see flat dollar amount and then the claimable items, then they kind of the light bulb goes off, the level of flexibility. And then with HR people, I find, because it's a different conversation, the business owner or the financial CFO or accountant, you can have the funding arrangements, but for HR type people, some of them, I mean, this is a generalization for sure, but to those people, you can kind of speak to the flexibility of it is the part that hits home, because you can go to a client that has 15 employees, and especially these days, day and age, you could have 5 generations with a 15-person company all working at the same company. And my question to the HR person is like, are their benefit needs the same? And how do you structure a plan that looks the exact same but meets the needs for everyone? It's damn hard. But the one way you can do it is, and especially this is where you can start to incorporate the wellness spending account side, is what if you gave them a dollar amount and then included potentially some taxable, but some more health related items, and let the employees decide where they want to spend their benefit dollars. And those that have higher medical needs can kind of funnel the money more towards the health spending account, and those that don't, but everyone's getting a benefit from it, which is key. And I think having those conversations with HR people, they kind of generally, they're more paternalistic. They're kind of thinking about it from the employee's perspective, is how can I make this really great for Sally and Joe and Fran? And they might even know their own situations and see where they could use it. That's usually where I would take the conversation with plan administrators, and it usually ends up ends up pretty good.
David's considering putting in a benefit program, a health spending account specifically as a starter program. And I asked him to come on today so he could ask you the specific questions on what he needs to know to put this in place.
So Lori and I had interacted a couple of years ago. We are currently, and at the time when Lori and I first intersected, I was working for an Indigenous organization. With that Indigenous organization specifically, the mandate was to try to hire as many First Nation employees as possible. And so First Nation employees, of course, have their National Insured Health Benefit Program, where they get covered through Health Canada. So it was a tough sell for us to try to bring in an external program, because the mandate was, well, why should we pay extra for a health program when most of our employees are going to be covered under NAHB? Now, with my current business, now I'm a business owner and looking to bring in an HSA myself. We have a much more blended team. We do have First Nation employees that do have an NAHB, but we want to make sure there's parity across the board for what we offer. From a business owner perspective, it really just comes down to the cost analysis. So there's a little bit of initial sticker shock when you look at, well, it's just a flat rate of $1,500 that you're just paying out to the employees. I have a better understanding now of the tax implications and the benefits there, but that's really kind of what it comes down to is from a business owner perspective, we're looking at, $1,000 or $1,500 per employee plus a 9% handling fee. So it's hard to get past just that kind of bottom line cost. But
for sure. And just as a suggestion too, this is just coming to me, but if you do have different needs in the workplace, so someone might not need more of the health related expense items, that's where you could utilize the flex option. So it is parity. So you could offer the same benefit to each employee, but if they've got an insured plan through the government, they can allocate their funds more towards the wellness items. It's a taxable benefit, but it is an option. And those that do need more of the medical coverage, they can funnel it towards the health spending account options. Just to talk on costs a little bit, like if this was, so you can allocate, and it is important, like there's a few things that are important in my opinion. Definitely do the analysis on what an insured plan, and your advisor will, be able to do that easy peasy. So you can compare the two. But a few things to consider on the HSA standpoint is what you allocate to the employees. Number one, doesn't need to be pre-funded, so you can hold on to it. And that's nice because you don't have to take a chunk of $1,500 and send it off to us and have it sit in our bank account. You can hold on to it. Some employers will actually put it into a separate bank account and have us draw from that when it's needed. Number two is most people will not spend the full $1,500. So generally speaking, 60 to 70% is utilization. If there's an insured plan, typically you'll see that lower. So it's not to say you've allocated the funds. You can budget assuming you're going to lose or they're going to spend the full amount, but it's super rare that they actually would. And then the other thing is if they don't spend it or utilize it, you don't pay a fee on it. So you only pay the fee on what's actually used throughout the year, not what's given to them. So
that's a really good point. The other thing is that when you're a small group and you have different people working different hours and you have a lot of people that fall below what would be standardized in the insurance world, so they're not working 20 hours or more on average, that health spending account comes into play as, again, another essential tool that you can have one amount for your full-time staff and then a different amount for your part-time staff, which really makes it unique in the benefit world. Mike, you had made a good point here on the chat bar about the study that BBD put out, which was excellent. I'm like Nicole. I've definitely utilized that information. I love the way that you put it together. Tell us a little bit about the stats that went into that report.
So what we tried to do is cobble together some industry information. So it wasn't specific to our block of business, but then also pair it with some information from our standalone block through myHSA. And that was some, what are the average allocations that employers are doing for HCSAs, and we can even drill into that at an industry level and so on. But the one I found interesting too, I can't remember who's, I think maybe Laura, you were raising it there a second ago about, if you're dealing with the CFO, let's say, in the conversation, it may be a different perception from, say, the HR lead, as much as those tend to be maybe larger companies. And there's an organization called Sanofi. They're actually a drug manufacturer, but for gosh, I think they've been doing this now for 15 years or so.
Oh, a long time.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really good info. So they do a study. It's publicly available, and they ask various questions over the years. But one they've been asking more recently is employee perceptions of the quality of their benefits plan when they either have or do not have a healthcare spending account. And there is a noticeable difference. In other words, if I have it, I think better of my plan, because there could be other factors that are at play too. But nonetheless, if you're chatting with the HR who's like, oh, employee engagement, attraction and retention, and all those important factors, you can show them some third-party information that says, well, this is what employees across Canada are saying about when they have a healthcare spending account.
And and it's great information for us to use. Back to you, Steve. What's the number one question that you get asked on an ongoing basis when somebody is considering a health spending account?
I would typically, if it's a smaller business, it's like, and I see Norm had a question in there about business owners and accountants, is basically, can business owners have these? That's probably the number one question we get all the time. And they can, and CRA's actually laid out the exact questions that, as a business, so someone who's a shareholder and an employee, there's, I think it's 3 questions, and one's a 2-part question on just questions that need to be asked to make sure it's not a shareholder's benefit. So CRA really does not want these to be, or they cannot be, a shareholder's benefit. They have to be an employee's benefit. But the nice thing is that CRA has laid out exactly what questions to ask. And I have seen some CRA audit. It was a group that came over from another provider, and they were auditing, and the new advisor asked us to help. And we kind of said, well, we haven't actually seen CRA audit one before, so we'd be glad to help just to see the process. The first form that they send is those 3 questions, verbatim. Yeah. And we, before CRA updated the IT bulletin, we used to use these 3 questions, and it was actually Hicks Morsley out of Toronto, is a big employment law firm, and they had a white paper where they said that these are the questions that should be asked. So I almost think that CRA said, this is a great, from the law firm, this is what we should ask, and then they just took the exact same wording and put it into the CRA documents. We were jumping for joy, because all we want and advisors want is just clarity. Like, you just need to know where the goalposts are, and then we can go operate. Great, being gray and not sure is no good for anyone.
Oh, I had the misfortune of calling CRA on some specific issues years ago, and the runaround and the reasonable and customary is like, when my mother-in-law told me to cook the turkey till done. I don't know, is that from done when it's been thawed or when it's, frozen? Like, I have no idea what this reasonable and customary means.
And what I find with advisors too, and Norm's question was, are we still hearing if accountants say no to these? It's very few and far between now. And what we do is we really work with advisors, and you can approach the accountants. So typically the accountants don't know this area. And I'm sure anyone who does kind of, if you do life insurance or estate planning, what you find is accountants don't really know that side of the Income Tax Act. They really have never, as you can imagine, aren't learning about PHSPs when they're doing their CPA exam. So they don't know, but they don't like to be told that they don't know something. So it's all in the approach. And so what we've always said from day one, and we were scared, I don't want to swear, but we were scared to approach accountants for the feedback, but we actually went in full tilt and said, well, let's talk to the accountants. Worst case scenario, we'll get some free advice because they're telling us we're wrong and where we're wrong. But what we found was we would just lay out, here's the different parts of the act that kind of establish what's allowable. Here's the shareholders benefit questions, right in, here's the link to CRA. So like, we're not accountants, but here's all the places to look. And here's our general sense, and let them come up with the answer, which usually is an agreement that it's okay. Because, and in the end, they need to agree, because if CRA does audit, they're their accountant. So they're going to be the one defending them. So it's better if we're all on the same page. On the reasonable compensation, I think this might be the year that we actually buy it, but there's some really good compensation reports. And I know there was one floating around on CGIB for the Toronto area, where you could literally, down to the type of job description, is get a full compensation package breakdown. So if I was an accountant, and I'm not, and I don't play one on TV, if I had to prove reasonable and customary, I would go to the Conference Board of Canada, purchase the very expensive compensation package, and I'm pretty sure there will give you a breakdown on what a compensation package looks like.
First of all, Lori, this is my first webinar with you, and it's awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm here.
Thank you for being here. Carl and I have a 9-life prospect, and they have some interesting ideas about health spending account, and they're wondering if there's any way at that size they can do what is typically done in a much larger group, which is, instead of salary, can they shift that salary increase, for instance, raise into an HSA, and essentially have different amounts per person? Is that allowable at that size?
So what you have to be careful with is it cannot be a bonus. So CRA, I think 10 years ago, closed that loop. So what some executives would do is say, don't pay me my bonus. I have all these medical issues. Pay me it in the form of a cost plus or HSA. And
Right.
they close that. So there is verbiage on bonuses. Different. So essentially what you're looking at, or what they're looking at doing, is a different amount per employee. You'd have to do different classes, and you'd have to be able to kind of verify why there's a different, just like a traditional insured plan. So yeah, like that one would be tough unless their accountant was really comfortable defending that.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be comfortable defending that. That's exactly what I thought, and what I've told them, that it has to be distinguishable by class or occupation or length of service or what have you. It can't just be willy-nilly, oh, I'd like my raise to go in and I want half my raise to go in, and so on and so forth. So it's just not, it's not possible.
Yeah, I would get so scared. That one sounds a little sketchy to me.
You want to avoid at all costs the anti-selection, right?
Totally.
Anybody who's going to come up with discrimination or anti-selection or even privacy. I'm sure, if I put you on the spot here, Steve, I'm sure that if anybody had questions, they can reach out to you. They can connect with you via LinkedIn if you're not already, and certainly ask those questions away. I always am so appreciative of everybody coming in, sharing this information, and the platform that will help us all grow. So if this is your first time, I hope you'll come back. And if you've been here before, I hope you'll continue to come back. I appreciate the support. And if you have recommendations on speakers that I should bring in, those experts to talk about, send me a note. I'm pleased to have everybody in. So thanks so much, and do accept this as my virtual handshake. And I look forward to those virtual coffees and continuing to connect.